Were you in your office and had the door locked?
Yes, sir.
Oh, because I was going to come in and talk to you, but the door was locked, so I figured, well, he's taking a nap.
He was trying to get some work done.
Taking a nap.
So our policy is always we'll go to 18.
Yeah, well, that's why it was locked for me.
St. John's?
So we cleaned it. We cleaned our flue.
They're actually easier to
My wife had a friend who came, brought the sweep, didn't seem bad, not too bad. She heard a little bit fall down. Of course, we have an insert. Okay, and we've never.
Did you take the insert out of the fireplace to see what
We
you got?
didn't. There was a part that needed to be let down when we did it. We did not do.
Veterans
but we
FTE.
I didn't know this. Nobody ever told me about this on this particular insert. And I was trying to think, it's like, well, gosh, I hope it isn't too bad, because whatever fell down is just gonna have to burn up now. I mean,
Sitting on top of the insert.
It's certain.
Well, it's on top of the
Document
smoke
did-
shelf because they didn't
Okay,
take
yeah,
the damn
here we are, it's IT
damper out.
server.
Well, they took the damper out.
56.
The insert goes.
And a docket
it-
image.
it's-
Because a lot of times they don't take the damper out, and then the damn stuff sits on top of the smoke shelf.
So last night,
One's gonna be
illustrator, one's
going
gonna be
really
an
good.
imager.
and Just smoke just pouring right out. I'm like,
fighting till
close
the
it up,
bitter end, you
and
know?
it just and it goes out. But the house, of course, by then was
Aging.
Full of smoke.
full of smoke, and I mean,
I feel
you
if
could
I
probably
don't use
smell it.
glasses,
But
maybe I won't.
I'm just wondering if we need pictures of how.
so we were just pulling a pin, dropping a plate, and a bucket full of creosote.
Or they'd all drop down around the fireplace.
Get an ozone machine.
Oh yeah.
Come in and do that.
You know what?
Get rid of your.
I remember the other line. I like that.
Expenditures are double
what was done. That's not a bad idea.
Close it up, get out of there, let it run for the day.
I used one after we had the crop fires.
Good evening. We'll call the regularly scheduled Ways and Means Committee to order on Wednesday, September 19th at 7 p.m. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you lead us in that, Sonny?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, would you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Gilman?
Here.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Here.
Lemkool?
Here.
Max Bauer? Here. Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Here.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Fleece?
Present. Next item is the approval of the minutes from August 15th regular session and August 15th closed session, which the closed session, I believe, was distributed to you this evening.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and supported to approve, is that both of them?
Yes.
August 15th regular and closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Would you read the public comment rules, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized, and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to partake in public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda.
Dean's got something.
Dean?
I would like to add the consideration to purchase fleet vehicles for environmental health under my section. You should have a handout on that item.
All right.
Ross has got
Any other additions?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I moved that we approve the agenda with the addition of the vehicle purchase for environmental health.
Support. It's been moved and supported to approve the agenda with the amendment of C3 to Health Department purchase of a vehicle. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same. Next item is special orders of business. I don't believe we have any. Next item is consent calendar. Would you read the consent calendar, please?
One item.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, public notice of proposed October 24th, 2012 oil and gas lease auction. B, no, approvals, none. C, action, oh, that's that part. That's way too short.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public wishing to pull the loan item from the board?
Just a quick comment, if we could have that passed on to the Conservation District for their information to Tree. It may or may not have some value to them, and also to each of the townships,
Okay, yeah, we can see that that's done.
if we could, please.
Just a notice of public hearing. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent calendar.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to approve the consent calendar as it is. Roll call vote, please.
Henschel,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Lemko,
Yes.
Maxbauer,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman,
Yes.
Please.
Yes. Okay, next item is department action items. Number 1, request for a new classification of server administrator. And I see we have Mr. Sheehan here to present that. Good evening, Don.
Hey, I'm Don Sheehan, the Director of Information Technology. And yeah, I'm here tonight asking for a server administrator position for the IT department. I brought it in April. There was some discussion at that point. And I have requested this position in the budget for the last 3 years. I don't think it always got to the point of being presented to the board because positions weren't being added. But I really feel that we've gotten to the point where we're not going to function well without a person, you know, with this technical capacity. And so that's why I'm here. I've talked to Dave and Jen. Both are in agreement of the need for the position in the office. I think there's a question of the funding and, you know, where that money will come from. But our department, as far as the servers, continues to grow and grow. And we need someone that can focus on these servers, that can provide the preventive proactive support for servers, upgrade them to the latest operating systems. We have a whole bunch, there's probably over half of them at this point that could be upgraded to a newer version that would allow for higher memory usage, better performance, capacity. And it's just like, where do those fit into a technician's schedule who's supporting all the clients on the desktops? And so, you know, what's tending to happen is even though the servers are one of the most critical things in our department, they can kind of sit there until something does go wrong, or, you know, we try to make sure we're monitoring and getting updates on all of them, but we could be a whole lot more proactive and doing much more with them. We've also shifted many of our applications from the AS400 platform to the Windows Server platform, and that's where our whole police system went. And a year ago, Laverne Forrest in our office retired. We do have her back on a part-time basis, but only for 13 hours a week. And so really that was a cut in the department at that point, but you know what I need to do is shift those resources over to the Windows side. We can reduce the AS400, that's where the applications are leaving, and I still have a programmer on staff who supports that. Laverne gives it some of the support, but it's really that Windows environment that we're missing now and needs some expertise.
Larry?
Well, just a quick question,
Yes.
I guess, for Dean and you, and Jen, if necessary. You did indicate that the position is in the 013 budget for consideration, and I'm just trying to figure out the protocol at this point in time. Would we just be moving forward with approving the classification, and then when we discuss the budget, then we would approve that as a added position within the budget, so there'd be two separate steps?
Jen has stepped out, but I believe Human Resources on page 15 has determined the classification. It currently has not been built into either the IT budget or when we talk about the budget later, both Dave, myself, Don, and Jen do feel, and you see you have some departments here supporting this as well, that this is a position that is much needed. The only issue that we're having is how we build that into the cost. And I think it will be seriously considered. It's under consideration right now, and if we, I guess if we had a different revenue situation, we would probably have built it in, but that has been the concern, how we pay for the position. So I think in the final budget, it's going to be there as to how we fund it. I was looking through the support letters from both the sheriff and Chief Warren, and I highlighted that they realize that this is going to be an added cost, because this cost is passed on to all the users of the system. There are places where we recover, under various grants. So, and the health department is a very good example of that. We do try to pass those costs on, but it is not currently built into the budget. But I know that in discussing this, Dave and myself and Don met earlier this week, and we do know this is a critical need that needs to be addressed. And
So are you asking for the classification approval now and the budget, when we approve the budget, the increase, or do you want both right now?
I'm not, the classification plan probably currently does not include this position. Correct. So that is one step to the process, and then the other part of the process would be actually including it in the budget that's recommended.
For 012?
For 2013.
For 2013. I guess for simplicity's sake, I guess I would make a motion that we approve the classification plan, and then we can get into discussion about the budget part of it
Support.
next. So I'll move that we approve the classification plan for this position, the grade H1.
Who supported that?
Yeah. Sonny?
Well, Don, and I think there's a need for this position. What I was trying to figure out when I was reading this is this a new position, or is this a reclassification of an existing job?
This is a new position.
Because we've had numerous discussions about reclassifications of existing jobs, and have decided we weren't doing any of that. So that's why I wanted to make sure that this is truly a new position, that we'll be going outside and hiring someone.
Yes. I mean, I'm not going to say that we might not find somebody qualified internally. I don't know of anyone that is.
We will be advertising for a
Yes.
hiring position.
Yes.
Okay.
Ross?
So, like an IT technician is what grade now? No?
Now I know what this one is.
I mean, this is F,
And
okay.
and F
So this
level.
is like 2 grades up the ladder, as it were.
All right.
2 steps up the ladder, okay. Jen is nodding yes, Don.
Okay.
Okay. So I mean, obviously, you would look internally to see if you have somebody qualified, but otherwise, you would hire from outside.
Right, and we are looking, I mean, we're looking for a bachelor's degree, we're looking for a minimum of 3 years' experience, we're looking for some certifications, that they have those server skills that we're looking for. I mean, we're really hoping that someone's going to be able to come in the door, and even though they don't understand our county government, they're going to understand that whole server environment.
Ron?
So this position is a server administrator, so it's a 40-hour week,
37 and a half.
37 and a
That's-
half.
Everyone in my office is 37 and a half, except
Okay.
for myself.
And so they're just going to be updating servers 37 hours a week, or are they going to be picking up some other loads?
Well, they're going to be helping the technicians also wherever they can, but really, yeah, upgrading servers. I mean, right now, our antivirus, it's current, but it's a lower version. I mean, we need to upgrade that server. If you have opportunity for Jason to come up and talk, dispatch, they would tell you they could use a person themselves just to do all theirs. There are a lot of functions there, and especially when we've had issues where we're linking into the other two counties, all of a sudden one day, oh, hey, Leelanau can't communicate today. What's going on? I mean, we end up with these almost every day of some server-type function under there, and what's happening is, yeah, technicians are pulled off, and they're not experts in it either. Hopefully most of it, we've got the documentation, but, that server person is really going to help. On the police side of it too, we have a lot of, with our New World application and the integration with it and linking to the MDTs, definitely we'd like to see them on that back-end support. So when the technician says, hey, this is going on, I need some help with this, they're going to be that person that says, okay, this is how that works. And so I mean, they're going to be fully supporting, as I see it, as a back-end, all the technicians, along with all those server functions.
Jason?
What is a grade H1 start at, Jen?
That's what Jen went running upstairs for.
The cost, I'll let
Yeah, and I wrote it down also. It's $23.65 an hour,
And I have a follow-up too.
and the end of the range was $29.63.
That's for next year, right?
That was a 2013 scale, yes.
Is that inclusive? Benefits, everything?
No.
No.
And then obviously, you kind of alluded to the fact, well, they would help out if there are other needs, but majority of the work would be the server functions.
Yes.
Primarily.
Yeah, and that's, I really want it to be, that's the focus. The other things are going to be the secondary. But, yeah, there's more than enough to keep a person busy.
Don, what's the, or Jen, what's the total amount of adding this employee dollar rise per year?
I have that information based on some, these would be preliminary amounts based on Sally's costing of the position, $56,800. And, that could vary depending on who you ultimately hire, whether they need full health for family or versus single. So, but that's costed at family health coverage.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Sonny?
If we approve this position.
You're approving the classification.
Or we're approving the classification, probably when we're done with this discussion, we should talk about advertising the position, because you're not going to hire this person in 2 days. It's going to take you time to find someone to do this job, I think. I could be wrong, but I know what trying to hire people in my world is like, and, trying to find qualified people is not nearly as easy as everybody tells you it is.
Chris?
Dean, there are many positions in the county that I think are worth funding. Recently, we had a discussion about the Veterans Department and adding staff there. My concern is that we keep asking you to find money, find money, find money. So what I would like to hear from you is, before I agree to this classification, that you believe that there will be funding for next year. And I'm not asking you to pull dollars out of your magic hat. We have to set priorities. Is this a priority that you and the administrator believe we have to fund?
Yes, Dave and I discussed this in the summary that you have, that we prepared regarding the budget, has this position on it along with a corrections officer. So we do feel that this is a critical position that we have to find the means to fund.
Okay.
Veterans is in here too.
Well, I wanted to just ask him out loud.
The
Thank
Veterans FT has, because it was approved earlier this year, is included in the budget already. The server, IT server administrator and the corrections FT at this point are not included. Those are two positions that we would like to find the way to fund.
Herb?
Can we get an organizational chart of your organization, Don, as to who's where, what, and why in your department?
Yep.
If we could, before our meeting next Wednesday. That'd be kind of helpful, I think.
Just so you guys know, this position is in Teamsters General, so we do have a posting requirement to post it 5 days internally for that union first, just as a FYI.
Is there anyone in the audience desiring to speak on this matter? Come on up upwards and we'll let you talk.
And I did also want to mention, I've had 2 staff people leave this year, and combined, the 2 of them were 27 and a half years of experience in my department, and those 2 people were the ones who did the majority of the support for the servers at the time. So I'm also lacking a lot of experience that was in the department and is not there anymore. And, you know, I mean, a lot of our offices are now, the courts are going paperless. If that server's not there for them, they're not working. I mean, that's what it's going to come to. And, you know, it's very similar to the police department. They're getting so reliant, we're moving to the electronic ticketing. You know, all those applications rely on those servers running on the back end, and we need to maintain them.
Jason Torrey, Deputy Director for Dispatch. I want to give you an apples to oranges maybe comparison of an IT position. Midland County 911, they're a comparable county to us. We use them quite often in a lot of our comparable statistics. They have a dedicated IT administrator for their PSAP. They manage less than what we have in our PSAP. So that person is responsible for the servers, their workstations, their software, and their enhancements. But that's just for the 911 center. I know our technician alone handles 85 plus MDTs, all the law enforcement division stuff, and the 911 center. That gives you any kind of comparison of the load that they're undertaking. A lot of their time spent on the server-based products, the NetMotion, the CAD, the live server, the message switch. I mean, we can go on and on about what they have to do and what they're obligated to do. But I bring that up because the 911 environment itself is going to go more we're going to be more focused on technology changes in the future. We're going to incorporate our next generation 911 products, which are going to bring voice, text, pictures, video. All these things are coming down the pipe, and they're coming soon. We really need someone that can get in there and understand those products, how they're going to work together, how we're going to manage and control policy over that. We hold regular meetings, Don and I right now, to try and manage our workload, public safety 911, and we struggle to find the time to get it all done. So we obviously support this position. I would love to see it based more 24/7 or an on-call type of environment, because right now we lack that too. We don't have anybody that we can call after hours, at least written into the contract, where we can call them on a weekend or a holiday and ask for help. That kind of falls on Don and I most of the time. And like he said, we don't, the expertise has to be there, the knowledge, the intimate understanding of how everything's working together. And we consider our equipment mission critical. I mean, it's public safety related stuff, and if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, which it has happened this year several times, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning and it breaks, we need to leverage expertise to fix it quickly. We've had our servers and our CAD system down for hours this past summer because we've had problems. Our SQL database, the backups were failing, the database errors. We don't have the expertise on hand right now to manage that environment. So we obviously support this 100%, and we hope that you can too, and you see it.
Any questions to Jason? Herb?
You know, you bring up a rather interesting point that because we don't have that, is there a way for us to contract for some of these services for somebody to administrate our servers as a contract basis rather than an employee?
we talked a little bit about that before, and, I think that would be possible. I feel like we should have at least one person on staff, though, who is working specifically for us coordinating all these servers, because otherwise, when we work with a contractor sometimes, they're going to do exactly what we ask. But do we always know what we want, how it should really be done, and the way it should really work? And, that's part of what we're lacking right now.
Jason?
Actually, following up on Herb's question, it seems to me there are a number of private, businesses that would love to come in and take a look and see how they can enhance, how they can help. And I understand that there are issues that you might want to have more control over, and maybe that makes that more difficult. But if you haven't taken a look, if you haven't had somebody take a look at the position and maybe offer what they would bring to it, maybe we're lacking then in at least exploring enough of the options before we can make a decision to have another person on staff. We do have some good computer savvy, server savvy people locally. There are some good network engineers locally here. And I think it'd be good if we explore that as a possibility before we commit to another near $60,000 in salary and benefits.
I'm thinking more of the weekend, nighttime stuff.
Can I've talked to and networked with several of and I'm speaking from the 911 community, but I've talked to a lot of agencies out there that have gone that route and attempted to do that. And what they run into is the intricacies of the network itself and the components that make that up and how that all works together seems to be a little bit more than some of those. They understand the networking side, but like the NetMotion side and the mobiles and what the purpose of those products are designed to do are different than what they're used to. I completely believe that having someone inside working on the floor every day of the week is the only way to go, so that they understand that better, so that when they go to troubleshoot, they have a better understanding of how all those components are designed to work together.
And I guess I would just add another, a lot of what my people end up doing right now too is they are knowledgeable about the application and everything, but they end up having to be that go-between between the vendor. And there's a lot of time simply spent working with the vendor of trying to isolate what that problem is and going through and implementing the solution. So, there's a lot of time where it's not, somebody doesn't just come in, I guess, and fix a problem. Sometimes it's trying to figure out what is the problem even to start with, and a lot of it requires working with the vendor to get to that point. We contract out right now for almost all of our network services, so I do use contracting services. I just feel here that I'd like to see one person who understands our environment, and then, if it gets to the point ever beyond that can't be handled there, then they could contract. Even contractors require oversight to make sure that what you're requesting is being done, and I don't know if I have the time for that, not right now either. I'd really like to see somebody coming in that can take control of this.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jason. Is there anyone else in the audience desiring to speak? Seeing none, we'll move it back to the board.
We have a motion to move forward with the classification plan for the server administrator, and we have support right now on the floor.
Everybody understand the motion?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, would it be your suggestion that we deal with the position now, and then, or would you want to deal with the position when we look at the rest of the budget and the rest of the positions that are being recommended? In terms of the approval of that?
How's the board feel on that, Sonny?
Well, I guess I would throw that back in Dean's lap first. If we advertise for this position immediately, and we find someone 3 weeks from now, can we find funding in the 2012 budget to bring that person on board today?
Well, I would feel more comfortable if you've approved the classification, and I think the message is pretty clear, not only from staff, but from the board's discussion and your action tonight, that we need to find the means to fund this position. I think it's too early to post. We need to address this in the budget first, and then bring it back. I would clearly want to identify how we're going to, building the cost into the IT fund is the easy part. What the effect is on all of the user departments and what those costs ultimately end up being, where we bill it back to the finance department or 911 or public safety, the city pays part of the bill too. We really need to look at some of that before we...
Well, it truly doesn't affect the IT budget because we're going to bill it back as an indirect cost to everybody.
That's correct.
else.
Whatever the cost is.
So it doesn't affect Don's budget per se. It's what it's going to do to the other budgets. The obvious question is, whether or not we want to wait 4 months before we advertise this position.
I'm not saying that we should wait, but we have to address the budget impact first. But I guess I want to be as clear, and that's my concern.
Chris?
I'm in no hurry. We've lived this long without this position. I think we can handle a few more months. I would prefer to give Dean the leeway that he feels he needs, and Dave whatever leeway he needs as they work through the budget process. I realize we're already into September, but I just want them to have time to give us, our options. And they've heard what our priorities are. They've heard, the Veterans Department, this clearly is important, but, this has to be billed back to every budget. All the enterprise funds, everything. So we've lived this long, I think we can live a few more months.
Unless the board has a strenuous objection, I think we ought to honor Dean's request and let him do the budget Terry stuff and bring it back to us. Everybody in agreement?
Yeah.
Bob?
Having been an IT director for a small company, and tell me if I'm wrong, Dean, but this is kind of one of those situations, it's kind of like going without your fire insurance. Well, we've gone this long, we're probably not going to have a fire. So, and I'll agree with the board on this. I'm just saying, Dean, if you find something like, it really makes sense to go ahead and go forward with it, it's not a bad idea, because that's kind of how I feel about this situation.
Okay, we'll leave it to Dean then to come back to us. Next item on the agenda is also Don's. It's RFP for switches, servers, and storage area network. Don?
Okay, basically this is our core switch. It actually sits in the closet over here, but connects our whole fiber network together. And our plan is it's 6 years old now, replacing that. And so when we did the bid, we did split it up and said the switches themselves could be evaluated separately from the server and the storage portion of it. But we're planning on moving that up to the 3rd floor also as a part of the rest of the server storage upgrade. So it really makes sense to do both of these things at this time. And so in going through the bids, we did end up splitting out the switches and recommending a different vendor for those than we did for the storage and the servers. So
These two components, these were a part of the budget for this year, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I will say that the servers and the storage is higher than what I had planned for.
What was the difference, do you recall?
I think I have 110,000 between this year next to do the servers and the storage. And our price is coming in at about 155. It is, I guess Dean would better able to explain, but more as a capital project, which we do over multiple years of depreciation is how that does get billed back to departments.
So you have the cash on hand now, and then this will be made up by depreciating and a charge back to the departments over the next 4 or 5 years.
I believe some money would still have to be, because even when I put it in there, I say, this is how much money I'm putting in, but it is a depreciation amount that truly goes in.
That is correct. We do have the cash in the IT fund to make the purchase. That's not the issue. Again, it comes back to when, this fund has a different accounting focus than our general fund or special revenue funds, where you, the capital here, this is a major purchase, so it's accounted for as a capital outlay expenditure, but we have to set it up as an asset and depreciate it. And we generally recover that cost through the depreciation charge on a 60-month payback or bill back. And here again, it's how the cost, affects Don's rates. He comes up with various rates for programmer time and all of the equipment and software, and this does have about a 16% increase in the rate. We have not evaluated, the overall impact, but here, this, we also support this purchase because it is technology. There are upgrades that we need to do, and we do realize that this will, increase our, costs that are billed back to the department. So we have the cash. We're going to build it into the rates, and I think some of the benefits, I don't know if Don had a chance to address those, but when you look at some of the lower cost options, the consequences of trying to, go with those other options mean that we're down for significant, a couple of days or even as much as 30 days in some areas, and that's just not acceptable. So both Dave and myself are supporting this. We will have some budget issues to deal with here, but we are supporting both the switches and the server.
Sonny?
I understand that the money's in the IT fund and we spend it, and I certainly support this purchase because I think it's probably time to do that. But I think this comes to a bigger problem that we have when we talk about bill backs of indirect costs, because we've gotten into this, this will be my 14th budget here now, and every year we talk about two things that affect our budget significantly are what healthcare costs for us and what indirect costs are, and what that does to departments. And it's things that the numbers affect these departments in the functions that we do truly without them having any control over it. And, somewhere or another, we've got to figure out some way to deal with these type of issues besides billing them back as indirect costs. Because we're talking about $218,000. There's, when you make that kind of a purchase and you figure you're going to collect it back over 5 years, that's going to affect every single department significantly in the county. And, I don't know what the right way to deal with it is, but the fact is, when we take these kind of purchases and put them back on an indirect cost, if you all remember last year, we looked at some of those departments, seen some very significant indirect cost increases a year ago. And now we're going to talk about spending another $220,000 and build that back into indirect cost, along with the $60,000 individual that we just agreed to a few minutes ago. So we really need to, as part of the budget process, and I know Dave's working on a new process and Dean's working, and we're going to see a balanced budget. I'm very comfortable with that. But as we look at how we do this, we really need to evaluate that indirect cost and how it affects our departments.
And I would just say, some of the equipment that we have right now is coming off of its 5-year depreciation, so what's coming in here is going to replace some of what's there that is going off, and typically that's how, as the purchases are made, they do equalize. In this case, yes, this is a more significant amount of money.
Is there a market for the equipment that we're taking offline?
We'll have to look at that, but definitely I think some of the disk drives, at least in there, the servers that are 5 years old, they're probably questionable. But I think that the storage that we were using there, I think there may be a market for.
Herb? I'm wondering if we don't have ourselves backwards on this. We're talking about hiring somebody to manage our servers, but yet they're not going to have any input into the servers that they're going to want to manage. And I'm just wondering
does your department have that expertise, or would we be better off to wait until we put somebody in and say, you're going to be in charge of servers, now what would be your recommendation to make sure that the servers that you're serving is going to do the job you think it ought to do for our county?
Interesting.
I don't know that answer to the question. The other question I have is, a lot of places are now going to cloud computing instead of having their own servers. Have we looked at that, and is that another option that we could do without having to buy that? Or is it not as cheap or as cost efficient?
Yeah, I guess the two different things of.
Yeah, I know, there's two different
Right.
questions there.
Yeah, evaluating the environment. Basically, this is almost, and when we're talking like a virtual server environment, everything running underneath here is primarily Windows Server. So what the person's going to be doing is supporting a Windows Server environment. We have a couple Linux machines there also. But I guess on this side, I would say I'm comfortable that we're making a very good decision of the environment and the upgradability of the environment. Truly, it wouldn't hurt if that person were on board to help us when we went through this whole thing and learned the management of it. That's something that we're going to do, though, before that person comes regardless.
Is this going to go into Windows 8?
Right, I mean, we're running VMware as the virtual environment, and then within that, you load up your Windows servers. So we still have 2003, 2008 would be where we're moving, and then is it 2012 next you move to. As far as the cloud environment, I mean, there are applications out there, but I don't think we're ready to go there yet. I mean, we only have a 15 meg internet pipe to get to the cloud. So, sometimes you have to bump up your internet bandwidth to get there. And then, based on who's hosting your applications for you. A lot of our information, I mean, I don't know if the police department would feel comfortable that all of their police mugshots and all of this information's hosted on the outside.
That's the way it's coming.
It is coming, and
That's the way it is right now.
And what we're creating right now is what they call an internal cloud, because we have this virtual environment. It makes it very easy to, hey, I want a new server. We can start up a new one tomorrow and start loading up applications on it because it's not tied to hardware anymore. And then eventually they start linking that internal one to an external. So you start deciding what goes outside, what goes inside.
Just some questions.
Yeah, and eventually everything will probably be cloud, because you'll say, why should I manage it myself? But, that industry is still working itself out, and, do you go with someone and find, how portable is your environment to switch vendors in the future? So I guess I'm comfortable with where we are right now.
Will our other infrastructure be able to take advantage of the improvements on this? I mean, do we have throughout our multiple buildings? I mean, you're talking about essentially putting a new heart in the system here.
Yeah, what this will do, at least putting in that new core switch, gives us we go from 1 gigabit connections to 10 gigabit fiber. You're not going to see that immediately within the rest of our fiber network, but we have the ability in the future to upgrade those electronics in each of those sites and bring them up to that 10 meg, which will fully support it back here on what we're putting at the core site.
Chris?
To say that I am technologically challenged is an understatement. Commissioner Gilman, before the meeting, he and I had a discussion about whether or not I was going to get a smartphone, and he handed me his, and I couldn't turn it on, and he said, you have it upside down. So that tells you how challenged I am. One thing that I read in here, it says, ultimately, the decision came down to which vendor is going to do the best job, which is good, and is proposing a solution that will grow with the county, that's also good, without requiring replacement in the foreseeable future. Please convince me that replacement in the foreseeable future isn't in our best interest. Because I'm seeing that without replacement in the foreseeable future is part of your reasoning.
Right, I don't want to have to replace it. I mean, I'm saying.
But why isn't replacement in our best interest?
Well, I'm going to end up going through a very similar process to what I'm doing right now, of where I'm having to take all these servers and migrate them to another environment and purchase a whole new environment for this $155,000, What I want something is modular, that I can continue to spend $15,000 and add more storage to it and keep growing over the years and just continue to add to that environment without another huge outlay of money.
These are layered, right?
They are, yeah, they're actually, you know, like what you call separate blades that would slide into the rack. And actually, Brian Flynn is here, he's the president from Avalon. So if you do have any vendor questions also, if you would like to ask him.
Well, and I think one of the, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but one of the benefits of working with the proposal that Don is recommending is that expandability feature. And I like you, Commissioner, I don't understand it, but when Don was explaining this to Dave and myself on Monday, I mean, that struck me as very important here. We need to be able to add to this at the lowest cost option available, and this seems to allow us to do that.
Okay.
Herb?
I'll make a motion to go with the recommendation for Nexus 5548 alternate switch bid to NECTEC in the amount of $62,960.42, and also approval for Avalon for the Dell servers and Dell Equalogic SAN in the amount of $155,712.
Support. One last question. Avalon, your local business, it's good.
Bloomfield, Michigan.
Bloomfield?
Yes.
Bloomfield Hills.
Michigan.
Any other questions? Rob?
Don, this might be kind of left field, but are any counties moving more towards a Linux-based solution using MySQL as opposed to Windows SQL? Or do the vendor software packages just not allow for that?
I was going to say, typically, it's the vendor who's making the determination. And actually, the health department, is that what you're running on yours, is the MySQL for the M&M? So the health department server, the Mitchell and McCormick, is using that. Okay. But you're right. Typically, it's the vendor making the determination.
Thanks.
A nice thing about the system is that having that SQL system on ours, we easily just drop right into the virtual server environment. There's no hiccups, no problems, we're going right over.
Any other questions? Everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Next item is
Christmas comes early.
finance. I believe that might be Mr. Bott.
Right, I'll go through this fairly quickly. Our general fund report for August is attached. The trial balance is on page 26. I was looking before the meeting, we've had significant improvement even through September 19th. The negative cash position is under $2 million, primarily because of tax revenues that have been collected the first half of September. So the revenue total here, which is about $19 million, is actually slightly over $20 million, or $24 million as of today. So largely due to the tax revenues that are being collected. On page 27, revenues by source, again, on the topic of the taxes, what I wanted to point out here was our Michigan Tax Tribunal adjustments are quite a bit less than they were a year ago, and I hope that trend continues. But the positive thing is the fact that the current tax collections are up $386,000 over the same period last year, so folks are paying their taxes. The interest and rents, the rate of return, interest revenues are just down. We're within our budget projection, but there's not a lot of return out there on our excess cash. And the transfers are, we budgeted lower transfers from the delinquent tax fund for the items. One item in particular was the BS&A software that was supported by the transfer from the tax revolving fund. On the expenditure side, a large part of the difference here, and we had quite a swing from last month, but it's due to the fact that we have 3 payrolls in August of this year versus only 2 in August of 2011. And the payroll, just for the payroll without the benefits, the cost is $650,000 every payroll in just the general fund. So that's a huge difference, based on just a couple of days as to when that payroll hits. But I'm not seeing anything that's out of budget or out of line with the budget at this point. And then I do need your approval on the budget adjustments that are presented. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Motion approved.
Support.
Been moved and supported to do the budget adjustments as mandated by Mr. Bott. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now Dean's bringing in the big guns.
You got my heavy hitter right next to me.
Although his suitcase is packed.
It is. I should have brought my stack because I think it's bigger than his stack. But I'm very happy to report that we have gone to the townships. All 5 townships have passed the appropriate resolutions regarding the septic treatment facility bond redemptions. The Board of Public Works passed their resolution at their meeting last Thursday. I did talk to Bob Cooney today because Commissioner Inman had wanted to be sure that our legal counsel, civil counsel, had reviewed the documents. Bob actually did not have time to review it, but he had Al Snyder look at it. And I'm very happy to report that Al is comfortable with the Second Amendment to the contract, and that, even though we're paying off the 2 bond issues as part of this process, those 5 townships are still ultimately responsible for and liable for the new debt, the new loans that are part of our refinancing, and ultimately the operations of our septic treatment facility. He did not, that was just based on a phone conversation that I had with Bob this afternoon. So what we're asking for tonight is approval of the resolution approving redemption of the Series 2003 and Series 2004 bonds and approving the Second Amendment to contract. And I'm going to let Bill comment. We want to make sure that you're fully aware of, we did make the changes to the document concerning the interest rate in the language regarding interest-only payments to limit the amount of time that would run. And Bill will make sure, comment on anything I might have missed in my brief summary of where we're at in this process.
Yeah, I think the main thing that you want to look at is the Second Amendment to the contract. And we did, on page 3 of that contract is where we address the interest rate would go to a maximum of 4.5% after 5 years. Is that a different number?
No, it's page 43. That's the correct page. It's 43 in your packet.
And then the other, the primary source of repayment, definitely is from the septic facility, but it talks about if it's insufficient to pay, that still rests with the townships, and that was what Dean was just telling you, that Mr. Snyder agrees that the townships, with this amendment, would still be responsible for that, for paying us back. And then later on there, we talk about if there isn't enough funds in the plant to make that payment, that the principal would only be extended for 1 year, a 1-year time, and then they'd have to make that payment up. So basically...
So they could only do interest only for 1 year?
Right, but I mean, I imagine in reading this, they could do it every year for 1 year, but they'd always have to make up the prior year. So all we'd be adding is 1 year to the length of this contract, basically, because every year they'd have to.
At a higher interest
rate. At a higher interest rate of 4.5%, so, and that's why we put that in there, the higher interest rate up to the maximum that could be allowed under this contract. And that's how we came up with that number.
One other change that we had made based on a recommendation of Mr. Tony Ansorgi was on the same page, it's paragraph 5. In the initial contract, we were somewhat restrictive in the amount of funds or what funds could be used to pay off the new advances or loans, and that was limited to a new bond issue. We added a few words here to say that almost any other funds that the townships might have, you know, if they had excess funds in their general fund or sewer funds, they could use those funds as well if it was, if it warranted doing that, rather than just limiting it to a new bond issue, so.
I believe those are the changes that we added to this since you saw this last month.
I just have one question.
Larry?
The initial interest rate after we acquire those bonds would be
2%.
50 basis points below the U.S. Treasury rate? Is that what it is?
For the first 5 years, we have proposed, and the documents are using a 2% interest rate.
Okay.
And then after 5 years, we're going to look at that 30-year U.S. Treasury obligation to see, the reason for that, if interest rates go up, we want to, you know, our funds are tied up here for a good period of time, 20 years, and if interest rates go up, we want to realize, you know, that additional return if rates are rising. And that's what that provision allows us to do, to reset the interest rate. All the schedules here show 2% for the entire 20-year term, but that interest rate will be looked at after 5 years.
Sonny?
Bill, the only thing when I read this, when we talk about the option for them to early pay out the bond, do they have the option of part of the townships paying their portion and other townships not?
Good question.
You know, because, you know, and you know, without picking out particular ones, Garfield, for example, may be in a position where they could pay off the debt, but Acme may not be. And
Well,
I didn't know whether there was
I think
a
that would
provision by which
entail,
that could be
if they
done.
did that, then that would entail, they're also, in addition to calling the bonds, we're in the process of them approving resolutions between each of the townships currently for those that are underpaying their 50% and those are overpaying. And that's these amendments. And I would imagine if a township wanted to pay part off, then they'd also have to amend these resolutions.
They'd have to amend the document. It wouldn't
And I'm not
necessarily
an
affect
attorney,
this
but-
piece of it. It would be because we're treating the 5 townships as a
Collectively.
collaborative.
Right.
You know, as a collective. And so if one of them wanted to do it, they would be between them and the other townships in the collective. It wouldn't be between them and us.
If I could, I want to comment on that. There was one township, and I'm not going to mention any names, was considering paying off their share of the bonds. I think with the contract structured the way it is, and I'm not an attorney either, so I'm not giving legal advice, but even if they paid off their share of the bonds, they were still contractually obligated. And that's a reason why you wouldn't want to do that, because you would think that, okay, if we pay off, we can walk away from this, but you really can't. So what they were looking at was, okay, this does help cash flow. We are getting a fairly good return on our money, and it's, you know, a good situation for all the parties involved.
Once you're part of the family, you're not going to get away from the family.
Yeah, they're not going to get away until the total loan is paid. So one of the townships could make a partial, you know, pay down our loan, but none of them are off the hook until
They don't walk away from their obligation.
until that
just
total
not paying
loan
the
is
bill.
repaid.
Well, and ultimately, the plan is to make these repayments from the septic treatment facility fund, and every year that will have an effect on the cash flow and ultimately the bottom line. And if we're short, you know, we fall back on, you know, the contract, so.
Herb?
Are we the first in line on this? So, in other words, if the townships decided to make a payoff, they can't pay themselves off first, they'd have to pay the county off first? Is there anything written in the agreement into that effect?
Well, I don't think, I mean, we talked about doing that, but then, they can only extend that late payment by 1 year. That
I know, but I'm
principal,
just saying-
And then they'd pay us more interest, so I don't think it's,
A lot of their taxes that come through too.
But I'm just saying, if the township decided to pay off their portion, because the interest rates started to go up and they could invest it someplace else, a lot more money, they pay us off, they pay themselves off, but they still owe the county money,
Well, that's one of
because
the.
it's a 50/50.
That's one of the reasons why we revisit the interest rate after a period of time, because not only would the county want a higher rate of return, the townships would as well. I mean, we want to make this, obviously, over time, if the revenues at the septic treatment facility improve, we have the means through that fund to pay these loans off earlier. That's always an option. For the townships to just put general fund money in, or the county to put general fund money in, is probably not the best option. I mean, it's an option, but it's not necessarily one that I would recommend.
Well, I was just trying to make sure that we're going to get paid before the townships get paid.
Well, ultimately,
So-
all the payments will be made out of the septic treatment fund, and I could pay the county first, but I'm going to turn right around and make the other required repayments as well, so
Okay.
you really won't see that.
See that difference, okay.
No.
Any other questions?
Do we have a motion yet?
No.
Do
Well,
we need to break out the motions technically?
Yeah, I'll just,
And we really do need to act on this tonight, because...
I'm ready.
All right, do you have the
Just
motion?
the call date.
I would move to approve the resolution approving redemption of the Series 2003 and Series 2004 bonds, and approving the Second Amendment to the contract, which is in our packet.
Support.
You got everything?
Are there any other questions? That's all.
Dean, are you okay with it being in one motion?
Yeah.
Yes, because the Second Amendment to the contract is
part
included
of that.
in the resolution.
Yes.
No, my only
I have
question.
a question for Dean or Bill. Now, we're using funds out of the delinquent tax fund?
no.
Our
This is out
general
of-
fund,
I'm sorry?
our general fund.
Okay, this is general fund dollars. Okay.
Yep, it's the common cash, but ultimately it will be recorded
In the general
in the
fund.
general fund.
Okay.
Everybody understand the motion?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yay.
Do we have
Do
to
we
have
need a roll call on
roll
that?
call on this, I think?
Well, we're going to, just
yeah.
without a
Yeah.
We are now.
Or support the motion.
Commissioner Inman,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Henschel.
No.
Please.
Yes. Motion passes 8-1.
Bill and Dean, I think we should congratulate them on the job that they've done in bringing this to fruition, along with Chuck Korn and the rest of the township supervisors. We appreciate the work that they're doing on this.
Thank you.
Are you
Thank
going
you,
to come and
gentlemen.
say goodbye?
Goodbye.
This is it?
This is probably it, unless you want me to stay later.
One more meeting, huh? Our board meeting?
I don't think I'll need to be there, do I?
You might want to be there.
You better say your goodbyes now, because this is probably his last official meeting, so.
He really does have his suitcase packed, doesn't he?
We could
I'm gonna
always
say-
talk to the sheriff and have the sheriff escort him.
If I could,
We do want to say some nice things about you at our board meeting, so,
oh, okay.
just so you know.
Okay.
You're more than welcome to do that.
You may not be there to hear it, but.
Yeah, I just want, one more thing on this. You got to know how much time Dean put into this,
do.
attending all the
Well,
town.
actually, we don't, but
I mean,
we
Dean and I
sorta
have put
do.
a lot of time into this, but he went over and above by attending all the township board meetings, not once, but 2 times, 3 times in some townships, and I don't think without him being there that we would be having these bonds called, so.
Thank you,
Went
Bill.
well above and beyond.
How many years
call of
has it
duty.
been, Bill?
This would be 28, just short of 28.
Thanks for your service, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yep.
And enjoy your retirement.
Thanks.
We know where you live.
At the moment, we do.
We have some vacancies on some boards and commissions,
Yeah. That'd be great.
like all of them.
Next item on the finance is the fiscal 2013-2015 cooperative reimbursement agreement, friend of the court, page 67.
This is the main funding source for our friend of the court. We also do receive some incentive and state funding. This came to us on September 5th, and it was due last Friday. I did talk to Chairman Inman because it required his electronic signature, and you had one previously from the prosecutor. It has been reviewed by Dawn Rogers, Judge Power, and myself, and everything was in order, and we definitely wanted to secure this funding. I don't know what they would do if we didn't submit it by the due date, but Commissioner and Chairman Inman told me to go ahead and submit on his behalf, so I'm asking for your approval of the grant. It covers 3 years, and I've indicated the funding amounts by year.
So we need a motion. I'll move to ratify the chairman's signature on the grant.
Support.
Everybody understand the support for us? Everybody understand, Sonny?
Dean, is this an increase on the 4D money, or is this the same money that we got last year?
It's actually a slight increase. We work with our we have a consultant, MGT, actually works on preparing the application, and then Dawn Rogers is the primary person to review it. The current amount for 2012 is about just under 1.3. It's 1,296,000, so it is a slight increase. They're obviously budgeting for, inflationary increases here, and why they've gone to the 3-year cycle, I haven't quite figured that one out, but
Because we didn't get it in 3 years before.
no, the current contract actually was an amendment to a 3-year contract, but the amounts were actually set each year. This is the first contract that I've seen. We've had a 3-year contract, but we did not know the amounts. This is a 3-year contract that has already, for each of the years, it specified the funding. What gets a little tricky with these sometimes is how the incentive money, or whether or not the state of Michigan is going to put general fund dollars towards this budget. So they must be fairly certain that the funding is going to be stable, and that's why they've, and if the amounts change, I'm sure we'll get an amendment to the contract.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Dean, did you want to handle the health department now?
Yes, if we could, so that we can get Jerry and Wendy on their way. The night is young. And I'm going to have Jerry come up. I've done enough talking.
Jerry Pugh, Finance and Administrative Services Director for the Health Department. Last month, in my absence, Dean brought an agenda item to you requesting permission for us to solicit bids to purchase a couple fleet vehicles for environmental health. In the process of putting together the health department budget, we always take a very close look at where we're at in the current year. We knew that our permit revenues in environmental health were tracking significantly higher this year compared to last year. And in the well and septic programs, through the end of August, they're up about 35%. So that, coupled with some cost savings that have occurred during the year, we do have some excess revenue in the environmental health food service, well and septic programs. So basically, that led us to where we're at tonight, requesting permission to purchase a couple of vehicles Basically, we're kind of accelerating things. We would have had one of these vehicles in the 2013 budget, but being able to purchase them this year with excess funds, we were able to take one of the vehicles out of next year's budget.
Jason?
I know that last month, when we, or at least when we last discussed this, I made the point that if we have excess revenues, we're overcharging. And, of course, I voted to get it to the point where we're at now, because we were not making a decision on whether or not we're going to buy the vehicles. But I still think we need to actually consider whether or not we're charging too much to our customers, so to speak. And I don't, if we're looking at a budget next year, maybe we can still wait till next year. I don't really support this.
Dean?
I understand and appreciate your comments, Commissioner. For 2013, Dave and I have held the Health Department's budget, the appropriation flat. We did not increase the appropriation from the general fund. They do an excellent job of managing their funds. In a period of time when our tax revenues are decreasing, one of the main areas where we look at, to stabilize or shore up that lost revenue or decreasing revenue are the fees that we charge. I feel that, the fees, we can do a cost study. I think that cost study will come back. It's been, over 10 years since we've done our last cost study, but based on the fact that we're not increasing their appropriation, Dave and I support, the purchase of these vehicles now with the available funding. There's no general fund appropriation, being assigned or used in this department, and I think it's a sign that the economic situation is probably improving. But if we don't consider the purchase, they do need to go back and build this into the budget, and one of those sources to cover the purchase. At some point in time they've got to replace their vehicles. The source of doing that then is fund balance or requesting additional county appropriation. So that's my support for this, for these purchases.
Well, I guess I see it a little differently. I don't particularly want to see the community as a well, or the county going to the trough. I mean, like you say, the revenues, we're getting less in property taxes, but this shouldn't be an area where we're making it up. I mean, fees should be appropriate to the cost of exercising those particular duties. And to be using it as a revenue source and then having the department somewhat, and I use this a little loosely, but reward itself with new equipment, I don't think is an appropriate use of that money. If the vehicles are necessary, if they are absolutely necessary, it's one thing. But on the other hand, then we should also be looking at mileage reimbursement, people using their own vehicles, and what the cost is, of having this extra equipment. So,
Dick?
Move for approval or
Second.
purchase of the two vehicles.
Second.
Ross?
I mean, the problem is that it's impossible to create an exact one-on-one situation of saying, this is what we charge and this is how much it costs. Now, I assume that the reason that there's been an increase in revenue is that the number of services we have provided has increased, and we've picked up some efficiencies because of that. Is that?
Yeah, there's several factors that have, entered into this equation. One of them was, significant health cost savings that were generated at the end of the budget year last year. I can't tell you dollar for dollar how much that impacted this budget,
Right.
But when we, analyzed our fees last year, we did not increase our fees in the environmental health program.
Right.
We're not proposing to change them at all for last year. And I can also tell you that the staffing is, kind of pushed to the extreme this summer to carry on this activity. And included in next year's budget is some part-time temporary sanitarian staffing to cover up for, to cover for this increased activity. And we may very well be filling a couple vacant positions within that budget next year, or, as we see this activity return to a more normal level. So, yeah, as the permit activity fluctuates, it's very difficult to determine a unit cost of service. But, several years ago, we did, compare our fees with other agencies, and, we were very much in line, and in some cases, under some of the other agencies in the surrounding area.
Sonny?
Jerry, if my memory is correct, we had eliminated a sanitarian in this department a couple of years ago, didn't we, or a year ago?
Yeah, we're down 3 sanitarians from where our peak was.
So as workload continues to increase, which we hope it continues to do, we simply are going to have more costs. So this money has been derived from fees, as that roll-up happens. These 2 vehicles, I'm assuming, are replacing 2 vehicles that we currently have.
Right, we have a 2002 Saturn that's in the fleet, has about 80,000 miles. Actually, what we'll probably do with that vehicle is move it to the personal health side and use it for some of the nursing staff that are being reimbursed mileage at the present time. And the other, we have a 2000 Ford Ranger pickup that has 100,000 miles on, so.
Okay, and those vehicles will either be reappropriated throughout the department or they'll be sold.
Right.
Herb?
Yeah, I was just, talking about, we have departments that seem to be needing other vehicles, and these may be a better vehicle than what they've got in their fleet. And I was thinking like the Conservation District and also our Parks and Recreation as to whether or not they could be able to use them. So I hope that internally, if you're not going to use them in your department, that internally we would let other departments know that we have them, so if they need them, they could be able to get that.
Yeah, in the past, that's happened a couple of times. Dean's usually aware of other departments' needs, and we'll try to work that out.
Jason?
Just a quick question. Has there been any cost analysis between mileage being paid and then having these vehicles?
I actually did a quick and dirty analysis on the 2002 Saturn about a month ago when I prepared this for Dean, and the cost of operating that vehicle using fairly current gas rates was 34 cents per mile over the life of the vehicle. That's including the total cost of the vehicle, all of the repairs, and estimated gas at $3.50 a gallon.
Insurance?
Insurance wasn't factored in, so that would be a little bit, but our insurance on a vehicle is $450, $500 a year. It's pretty insignificant.
That's a lot when you break it into how many miles are driven, though.
Well, it'd be another 5,000 divided by, 80,000 miles.
Rob?
If this is a surplus from inspections, and you're talking about hiring temporary staff to help with inspections next year, wouldn't it make more sense to take the money from inspections and put it towards hiring the temporary staff?
The situation here is if we do not spend this money, we will be returning grant money to the state. Bottom line. That's what's driving, that's what's driving this decision, and that's why it has to happen by September 30th.
Chris?
Keep in mind who gives money to the state. All these have been kind of guy questions. I'm going to ask you a girl question.
What color's the car?
No. You're buying a 2003, I'm just curious. I'm not criticizing Jerry, truly. I'm just curious. You're buying a 2003 four-door sedan. Why four-door instead of two?
Twos are hard to find.
Yeah, you can't even find a two.
I mean, not a sedan, but I mean, why not a?
I mean,
why not a
frequently-
Honda Fit? I'm just curious.
Oh, I don't know, sometimes, we don't,
And why-
Sometimes we use them to take staff to conferences. I mean, this vehicle probably will not because it's fairly small anyhow, but you have nurses that have equipment, a lot of times they just stick it in the back seat.
Well, I mean, for me, I would never buy a two-door car and
Yeah.
didn't recently because I like to throw stuff in the back.
But, yeah,
but without
occasionally
having-
we have more than two people riding in the vehicle, and it just, I don't know, that's just been our standard practice.
And the other question I have is, the 4x4, why do we need a four-wheel drive, and is it two-door or four-door? Again, it's a girl question.
It's two-door, just a regular cab, and again, it's not that the sanitarians are going to need the four-wheel drive very often, but just some of the work sites, if they are out in the winter months, or, you get into some soil conditions that, it is helpful.
How many four-wheel drives does the health department have?
2, 3, 4, 5.
And this would be the fifth one, or sixth?
This would be the 6th.
Okay. Any other questions? Everybody's familiar with the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All vote?
Roll your eyes.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
No.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Gilman,
No.
Henschel,
Yes.
Yes.
Inman, Fleece.
Yes. Motion passes. Mr. Chairman, while we have Wendy and Jerry here, I'd just like to compliment the staff at the Environmental Health. I'm on a nonprofit board, and they were extremely helpful in them on getting a food permit and being able to get a temporary permit for them for fundraising they have, and they were quite impressed with the help that they were given along the way to be able to make sure they get everything done right. So I think it's important to note that we're not there just to make sure they're licensed, but we're also there to educate and make sure that people know how to do the thing properly and that they follow the rules. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I see, if I could ask you a question, I believe it's on October 3rd, you have some flu shots for the employees, city and county and so forth. Is it just flu shots, or do you offer other shots like shingles or whatever?
Just flu shots.
When we're going out to the community, it's typically just flu shots, but we do offer appointments.
Okay.
Who comes into the health department for a flu shot right now would be evaluated to see if it's a pneumonia shot or any other vaccine.
Would we want Wendy to come up so that we can pick this discussion up on?
Yes, please.
Sorry, Wendy, but
You'll get used to it.
Okay, if you could repeat that, please.
Sure.
And your name and position, please.
Wendy True, Health Officer for the Health Department. With the flu clinics, for most of the clinics, if we're out in the community, we are just bringing the influenza vaccine. Sometimes we will have the pneumococcal, which is for pneumonia, depending on what the age of the population or high risk, depends where we go. But for the ones here, it's going to be just the flu vaccine. If you make an appointment at the health department, you will be evaluated to make sure you get all the vaccine that you need.
Wendy might mention about the clinics that'll be at the Cherryland Mall.
Actually, we're not doing those clinics due to the move. It was just, I think, too much for the staff to try and coordinate having that site open and getting it furnished and supplied.
Because last week I'd heard that we were going to, so now you're not going to?
No, the manager for the clinical services decided it was just too much to ask the staff.
I called the health department number today, 922 something, and I was really surprised at the recording I got.
Probably had the wrong number.
No, I double checked it. And I got the health department, but it said, leave a message and somebody will call you back. Is that right?
I've gotten that message as well.
What time did you call by chance?
I called about 4:35, 4:40, somewhere right in there. Because I looked at my watch and I thought, Well, it must be after 5.
Well, I can tell you, we were both there. Clinic hours typically end at 4:30.
At 4:30. Our
It
staff
depends on-
typically works 8 to 4:30.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not sure what number you called. Generally, there are...
What's the main number?
4831.
No. Let's see. It's the one on the sheet that we all were issued. Maybe I've got it with me.
I've dialed it and gotten a recording as well, Commissioner Fleece,
I called, let's see here.
but that's when I've just called
Yeah,
someone else.
922-2700.
You can get a recording in my...
Okay, that's the auto attendant for administration.
That's
The auto attendant number, so that would be the number if you...
But obviously, you don't have caller
The
ID.
unpublished number, or the published number for administration, rather than publishing Wendy's number or my number, that would typically ring into Debbie Minor. And Debbie is only there till 4:30, but we were actually over touring the new building at that time.
Okay.
Speaking of the new building, would you like to give us an update? Because we haven't been there.
Yeah. How's it coming?
On schedule, on budget, which is good.
Oh,
I like budget.
Sure, I'm not sure whether this, anyhow.
Yeah, I did receive an update from, is it the one that Janice sent today? Jerry, you're there, I'll let
Okay.
you know more than I do about.
Anyhow, and the exterior, the majority of the sidewalks are in, and they will be completed by month's end, is what Danny had indicated here. The asphalt is completely in at the, well, the first layer is in at the rear of the building. They've moved all the construction trailers back there. They have all the curbing in front of the building now, and I would expect that would be completed sometime next week. And again, this says that it will be completed by month's end. Irrigation installation has been completed. The system's going to be tested and confirmed operational before being blown out for winterization. They're continuing to do the installation of landscaping, which again will be completed early in October. Most of the exterior building lights are scheduled to be installed by the end of this month. Inside the building, a significant amount of the painting has been done. They're starting to install the ceiling grids. There's quite a few of the cabinets that have been delivered, so none of them have been installed yet, but there's cabinets being delivered to the building, so they'll begin installing those soon. All of the tile floor has been completed, like in the bathrooms, the lab areas. We didn't walk through the dental clinic, but the dental clinic is scheduled to start getting furnishings delivered and installed the 1st of October. Mechanical, it says, they're continuing to tie in the ductwork and work towards completion of connections of all the mechanical units. Guys were there working on the electrical. They've got quite a bit of wiring strung in many of the areas. Light fixtures will be installed as soon as the ceiling grids are in place. Fire suppression, irrigation heads are being installed in areas where the ceiling grid has been completed. The elevator will be completely installed by the end of this week, and inspection is scheduled, let's see here, once the ceiling and lighting grid is complete and the flooring is installed. Interior doors, some of those are actually on site now, and a couple of those have actually been installed. And the exterior aluminum entrance doors are scheduled to be completed by the end of the month. Some of the ones to the rear of the building, the smaller single door entries, those are all in place now. So the building's really starting to look pretty nice, and I guess if anybody really wants to see the building, if you show up over there towards the end of the workday, 4 o'clock or after, you could get inside and probably not disturb anyone.
We're also working, we have an internal committee just as far as coordinating the move. There's a lot to a move, and you've got clinics, and we want to make sure we're still offering services, some services the week of the move, so we're not putting, anybody who's on WIC in jeopardy or any other services they might need. So we're coordinating that. We already have staff who are starting to pack the non-essentials. We're purging files and things as we can because we want to just move absolutely what we need. We're color coding everything, and staff have gone over, I think, in small groups at the end of the day the past few weeks, and they're kind of walking through and getting a feel and trying to rethink clinic flow and functionality because it's such a different setup from what we have now. So I think everybody's just giving a lot of thought and making sure. What was that?
That is not a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's a good thing. And we're also taking serious looks at phones and things like that, and trying to save some money and not maybe have somebody have a cell phone and an actual work phone if they are spending a fair amount of time out and they just need a cell phone. So we're really trying to make sure we're being efficient with all our decisions.
Yeah, when we did the initial pass-through on the phones, I think we're going to probably be able to eliminate maybe 20 landlines that we have now, and that will only be with adding about 6 cell phones. And those will probably be on a per-minute basis that will have, pretty nominal costs. So, and just getting back to the flu clinics, it just became very apparent to all of us the significant amount of work that we have ahead of us between now and the second week in November, and just the feasibility of trying to set up an off-site clinic with the staffing that we had. It just, a lot of us are putting in considerably extra amount of time now, and, we're just kind of stretched to the limit, so.
Herb?
Yeah, at our wellness committee, it was discussed whether or not we might be able to put in a walking trail around our property up there. And I don't know if anybody has thought about that and whether or not we could ask for volunteers someplace, maybe this spring, that we might be able to go out and maybe do a GIS to be able to map out a trail for the employees to be able to have a place to go and walk and get exercise. So
We've had a few of those discussions come up too, and I thought we also could possibly look into a small local grant, maybe to develop something like that too.
So it was just, kind of one of those things that they talked about, walking around the trailer park across the street, but, the, not called.
Mobile home village.
No, mobile home court, excuse me.
Shame on you, Herb.
Yeah, sorry about that. But anyway, and we just felt that, that probably wouldn't be as good of a deal as if we had our own particular walking track or trail or something around the area. I mean, we could do a wood chip trail, it doesn't have to be paved, and I think it would be just a very thing. And then you have an opening for your PR person, marketing person, I guess? Has that been posted yet?
It's not been posted. I was just reviewing the job description and made a few tweaks to it, but Jen, I did email it to Jen today, and she should be posting shortly.
Mm-hmm. I just wondered, we don't have a marketing person here for the county, and I'm just wondering how we might be able to maybe add something into that when we start looking to hire somebody, how they might be able to help us at the county to be able to do some of our marketing and PR too.
Yeah, it's a combination of marketing, maintaining our website and our Facebook page, because a lot of our clients actually use Facebook to communicate with us, and then also health education and doing health fairs, so.
Yeah.
Jason, did you have something?
No, I don't.
Anyone else have any questions for him? Thank you. We appreciate it.
Hey, Herb, the DPW needs a marketing man.
Yeah, no kidding.
For the septic plant.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, next item up is administration, 2013 ranking prioritization matrix. Dean?
I'm not sure what to say or what to comment on regarding this, so hopefully you've had a chance to review it. I know that I have just briefly looked at it this evening, so unless you have any specific comments or questions, this really does support decisions regarding allocation or priorities. I think in the overall budget process, maybe not so much for 2013, but it should be used as a guide to making those decisions. It might be used more moving forward.
Works for me.
So I'll take any comments or questions back to Dave, or if you have questions or concerns, feel free to email those to us.
I just can't help but feel that dog licensing would have fared much better if it had been dog and cat licensing.
Dickie do. You gotta gotten more votes from Dickie.
I couldn't help myself.
Here you go.
Does anybody have any comments for Dean?
No.
Regarding the matrix?
That's pretty much what we expected. It's pretty much what we seen the last go-around.
That's so true.
Yep. Next item would be the budget update. I think they handed you a sheet out.
Yeah, we got 3 sheets.
Did you have any comments on that?
Definitely. Dave and I, over the course of the last month and yesterday, putting together the summary, we know that you want to know where we're at. This is headed as general fund summary and issues, and the 2 pages that are attached are for the general fund only. We have about 80 other funds. Not all of those funds are required to have a budget, but the focus here is primarily on our general fund. And those do show, if you're looking at the recommended column, which is the far right column, that it's balanced at this point. And it does show, a slight increase, $388,000 versus the current 2012 budget, and that is based on any amendments to date in 2012. I don't think we've significantly changed the budget, but we're looking at about a $400,000 increase. If you go back to the 1-page summary, starting with the revenues, and we generally try to focus on revenues because that's what supports the budget, but the first item, we're looking at some additional tax revenue from the brownfield. It's primarily due to Copper Ridge. This hasn't been finalized or approved by the brownfield at this point, but we're looking at those revenues that have been kind of held for a project that doesn't seem to be moving. Summarizing here just some of the key changes. Obviously, it's impossible to provide you with every line item that would change, but just hitting the major ones here. The district court revenues are down, and that's all revenue sources, so those are the changes that have been built into the recommended budget. It reflects those reductions. There's additional rent from the new health services building, and when you look at all the other remaining revenue line items, there's a $108,000 increase. So the $388,266 ties back to the increase that's on the second page. It really gets interesting when you look at what Dave wanted me to do was kind of put this in a current services format, which means that we're looking at the services that we're currently providing without any expansion or additional FTEs, because at this point in time, we have not been, directed to do that. And in fairness to Dave, he's trying to put together a current services budget without any radical or major changes, primarily because we simply don't have the funds to do that. But when you go through the first item, there's no amount. Next week, we meet with our benefits agent, and we'll be provided with our health insurance renewal and the rates. We simply don't know what that's going to be until we meet with those folks. We did build a 10% increase into the health insurance costs across the board, not only in the general fund, but the other funds. So hopefully that will cover some of that, but it could be higher, too. I don't know at this point. The first item that has an amount, though, our building authority debt service is higher, and it's primarily higher due to the addition of the debt service on the new building. And that takes into consideration, this is a net number, because we had refunded one bond issue, the Hall of Justice out back, and we had called the Woodmere bond issue to realize the savings by using our own funds. So the debt service on the new building is $293,000, and it's offset by $70,000 in savings on refunding and calling the other two building authority issues. Overall, personnel expenditures with contracted and, just bargained for increases in, wage adjustments, that's a $315,000 number. I've added the veterans FTE here to show that separately. That may not be fair, but, that was one of the items that we have had to cover. The MMRMA net asset distribution, that's the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority. That's who we have our insurance with. We, because of their favorable, it's not from their underwriting experience, it's from the net assets that they're carrying. We have developed a net asset distribution policy. When we have net assets in excess of the amount that they need to manage and run that risk management aspect for us, this is a return or a rebate that we're expecting to receive. This is one-time money. We have received net asset distributions in the past. For this year, it's $171,000. It's based on market returns on, their investment portfolio primarily. And because the county has been with them since inception, we're getting a sizable amount back. And we can use that to apply against our insurance premium, so it's shown as a reduction in the insurance cost here. Transfers to the courts are up, circuit court and district court both. Our caseload has bumped by 1% in circuit court, and so that means, we're covering a slightly higher cost there. The transfer to the facilities fund is higher to cover, some repair and maintenance costs that we have there and slightly higher utility costs. All the other expenditures, without getting into hundreds of lines of detail, are up $145,000, showing the current services expenditures equal to the revenue amount above. We have some significant capital needs, though, that need to be addressed. Danny Brown has identified about $1 million of capital that needs to be at some point in time considered and discussed. But what we've done here is identify what we feel are the most critical needs. The roof on this building needs to be replaced. The air conditioning unit, the chiller as it's called in this building, has serviced this building since the building was built in 1978, 1979.
But we approved that.
Last week, we approved a compressor purchase, and I can update that Danny informed me that compressor has been replaced, so we are functioning with 2 compressors, but the unit it's old. And the cost that I have here is for both items. The roof is $130,000, the estimate. The AC chiller unit is $275,000. The city cost shares with us at 26%, so this is net of their reimbursement. We have not had that discussion with the city, though. And then probably the other most critical need for safety reasons are the bleachers at the Howe Arena, but that's a $200,000 item. We've had also vehicle requests. Facilities are requesting 2 vehicles costing $52,000, a truck and a van, I believe, and the sheriff's office has requested $300,000, 10 vehicles at $30,000 apiece. We have that number included here We're not sure that we're going to be in agreement with 10 at 30,000, but they did make that request. And then the corrections FTE is costed out at $56,596. The IT server administrator, $56,819. We did not include an amount for document imaging. There are several requests to continue document imaging. Prosecuting attorney, circuit court, district court, the probate court, quite a list there. Those capital and other requests total $965,415. We have available funds in our county facilities and capital improvements fund, but when you consider or compare those with, those major capital and vehicle requests, we're about 300,000 short. And I do want to, just in case we forgot, we really don't know what our health insurance will renew at, so that could change this bottom line figure significantly. Now, to address the capital needs, we can put some of the things off that Danny is suggesting that we look at, and what we're proposing there, we're hopeful that we do sell the health services building on Garfield, and those funds would obviously go, we would hope that you would want to use those in a capital type fund to take care of some of those needs. And the tax revenue that we're budgeting right now, without considering the Brownfield or Copper Ridge, the CPI is tracking positive. We've not built in any increase. We have the 2013 tax revenue at the 2012 levy amount. Construction code activity, Bruce is telling us it's up 7%, so there is new construction. Some of that won't hit the tax roll until 2014. Ultimately, we really won't know what taxable value does until we get the equalization report next April. So Dave, I have to give him full credit for this. We generally do put together a conservative revenue estimate, and he feels it's wiser or more prudent to not budget any tax revenue increase at this point, and I definitely agree with him on that. And if we see a bump in that number, we can take the number up when we know that to be the case. You could even look at that next month when we know what that CPI adjustment is. It's at 2.2% right now, but there's 1 month of the calculation that we don't have. The state looks at the CPI change one fiscal year compared to the next, and they average up, the two. It will be over 2%, but what that means in terms of tax revenue, until we see, what the equalization report looks like next April, it just doesn't make sense at this point in time to budget that revenue. But we are looking at, we need to recalculate our interest revenues based on what we've done tonight with the septage bonds. That will increase interest revenues. We looked at a 0.75% rate versus the 2% rate on some of those funds will add some revenue. The increase in the revenue sharing reserve fund has not been built in because I don't know what the CPI is. There are some revenue sources that we're looking at that we're going to need to kind of close this gap, and but most importantly, knowing what that health insurance renewal will look like next week is going to be a big part of this before we can give you a final recommendation.
Herb? Yeah, my question is on the bleachers in Howe Arena. Is there a way for us to bill back to those people that are renting their facility that would be using those bleachers? Looking at that rental rate as to what we're doing and how we might be able to recoup, because they're the ones that really
I want to talk about that for just a second.
damaged that more than we have, so.
Dean, I have a question, and thank you, Commissioner Lemko, for bringing that up. The only people that I've ever seen use those bleachers are Friends of Ice. And as I look at that contract, we basically provide them space. Why do we need to provide the bleachers? Because that's not in there that I can see.
That's a very good question. When that item was presented, obviously, I actually asked that question.
Because, I mean, they get that space at a bargain basement price of $8,000 a year. Bargain basement.
That's correct, and this capital requirement is not specifically addressed in the ICE lease. I mean, they are responsible for the Zamboni and for the refrigeration equipment.
But
it was something that we should have addressed in that agreement.
But it doesn't say that we have to provide those bleachers, so why not just not provide them?
Well,
I mean, this, I'm just, it's $200,000 that we could, and they make a lot of money.
I would definitely like to have that discussion with ICE.
I would too. I would too.
However, I'm not sure if it's used for some of the shows that we put on.
I have never seen those bleachers out for a show, not for the flower show, not for the RV show, not for the hunting and fishing show, and Dean, you know I'm there more than anybody in this room.
No, those are all very good questions, and I would prefer that we use the funds for other capital needs. However, I know there's a safety
I know,
and insurance.
but just don't put them out. If they want bleachers, they can buy them.
Well, we will definitely take a closer look at that and address that issue.
But Dean, is that not a Parks and Recreation issue than it is more of a county commission issue?
Facilities issue.
Is it facilities, or is it a Parks and
Well, it's a
Recreation?
budget issue. I mean, Parks and Rec can't buy new bleachers unless we give them the money.
Well, but then...
But nobody else uses those bleachers other than, that I've ever seen, other than Friends of Ice.
Who's using them is critical to how this issue is addressed, in my opinion, because I thought the same thing. I felt it was
Don't put them out.
Well, they need to put them out, but
Why?
they need to replace them.
Why? They're charging, well,
They
we
need
can
to
have this
figure out-
discussion during
They need to figure
budget.
out how to replace them, not us.
But not us.
Well, I think Dean can certainly...
Just so you know where I'm coming from.
Actually, we're on the same page.
Oh, good.
But reading the current agreement,
I can't find it in there.
it would seem that that's our responsibility. I don't like that answer, though.
I don't see it in there. I'd like to ask that question of Mr. Cooney, and he's provided me with that contract more times than...
I have
Jason, did you have anything to add?
I actually just had a comment on property values, and I'm really hoping that this doesn't get affected too much, but I mean, there are other things that are going to be happening in the next year between what I expect is an inflationary curve, which could, I guess, be beneficial to property taxes in a way. But there's also going to be, assuming that the healthcare law is held intact, there's also a 3.8% sales tax figure, which kind of lowers the saleable value of properties, which will ultimately suppress the value of the properties overall. And I'm just wondering, before we talk about being conservative, yeah, it's a real good idea to be conservative.
Well, in the past, we've looked at the CPI, and we've not, most recently for 2012, we didn't budget the full 2.7%. But, that spread between the SEV and taxable value for us has narrowed, and the potential for a reduction in taxable value is definitely there. I mean, there have been tax tribunal adjustments. There are border review adjustments. We're seeing good activity in our Register of Deeds, which are all positive things, but I think ultimately there are sales that are probably going to have somewhat of an impact on taxable value, probably lowering it. Is the bump from the CPI enough to offset that? That's the risk, and I'm not, and I know Dave, we'd rather take a wait-and-see approach to what tax revenue does. there are positive indicators out there, but there's also that, when equalization has time to analyze some of that sales data, I think we'd be better able to tell you that we're comfortable in increasing tax revenue, but at this point in time, and Bob Vandermark has told us that they have the ability to do that. I don't think we're able to do that, though, until that December timeframe, when the assessment rolls are turned into. So, at this point in time, I'm not going to tell you that we can take tax revenue up, because I can't be certain of that.
Any other budget questions?
More to come.
More fun.
Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Dean.
Next item is unfinished business. I have a question from, I think it's RM&A, regarding Tattle Board.
Yes, we have a follow-up meeting that's been posted.
Right, for October 3rd.
Yes.
But my question is, I got an email, I'm sure everybody got it, from the mayor.
Yes.
And I didn't get the drift. And what the question was, or what he was insinuating, that this board, was not going to eliminate the county commissioner position on the Tattle. And I don't remember the meeting that way.
No, we haven't came to that conclusion.
I don't remember the meeting that way either.
Yeah, neither do I. So maybe he just misunderstood or something.
Yeah.
Well, we can discuss it at the
And I'll make sure he gets a second invitation if he can show up.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
And then could you do Sonny's disclosure?
Yeah, that's.
I was just going to do it under notices.
Okay, all right, okay,
Or under
good.
notices.
All right, good.
Because all I have to do is provide you written notice.
Yeah, we just want to put it in the minutes. All right, good.
Do it under notice.
Okay, next item is new business. Any new business? Second public comment. Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to comment? Seeing none. Commissioner committee reports? Any commissioners got committee reports? 14 is notices and announcements. Sonny?
On your desk tonight, I provided you with a cover letter and a copy of a proposal. Wheelock & Sons Welding has been contracted by the DPW to fabricate a guardrail to be put at the Peninsula Township Sewer Pump Station. This replaces a split rail fence that has collapsed apparently, and they're kind of in a hurry to get this done. The proposal is for $480 per our purchasing policy. As long as it's less than $500, I just have to provide you with written notice. Here's your written notice.
Thank you.
The second thing that I would have, as you remember or may remember, I told you that the Resource Recovery Council meeting for the first Thursday of this month had been postponed. Just a reminder, that meeting is tomorrow night at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
On the 20th. Okay? That's all I have.
Jason?
I'll have a similar thing to come before you as far as the some equipment sold for the county jail. Other than that, the Constitution celebration went very well. We had hundreds of people. We had a car show. We had basically a full house all day, and then for the evening dinner, we served about 110 people for the evening dinner, which was pretty excellent. And I thank those who participated and contributed to that effort. We'd have to say that it was a resounding success this year, and we're looking forward to seeing people next year, hopefully in the same time, same place.
Chris?
Well, I just wanted to make people aware, I know Commissioner Lemko mentioned the Wellness Committee, and I don't know if the public's aware of this, but the department, Michigan Department of Community Health, helps people every year quit smoking. And they offer, if you dial 1-800-QUIT-NOW, they will offer you up to an 8-week supply of nicotine patches, gum, or lozenges free of charge, and as well as free counseling to help you quit smoking. And as someone back in 1986, who it took 3 tries to give those things up, every little bit helps. So I wanted to mention that. And the other thing I wanted to say is the vice chairman of our Commission on Aging, Al Pidwaden, his brother passed away yesterday. And there will be visitation tomorrow in Sutton's Bay at the Martinson Funeral Home from 2 in the afternoon until 8 p.m. So my condolences, as well as the Commission on Aging Board's condolences, go out to Al and his family.
Send a card from us.
Do we have some basic cards that, Chris, you want to pick one up at the store or something, or?
That's fine. Commission on Aging is already, we're going to take, voluntarily donations, and we're going to wait and see. The obituary is going to be in the paper tomorrow, and we're going to see.
I'd throw in some money for a card or whatever we can just sign around.
Whatever remembrance the family would like.
Okay.
Rob?
On a positive note, from the membership meeting of the Buckley Old Engine Show Club.
All right.
The spirit of Traverse City was on display this year at the Buckley Old Engine Show. The volunteers of the club are going to take the train and remachine every moving part so that it is
cool.
pristine for years to come. They're going to redo all the wood on the cars that you ride in, repaint it. It's going to be probably pretty mint by next year at the show, and it expects to be running next year at the Buckley Old Engine Show.
Perfect. Beautiful.
You know, I was at my son's home last night. He lives 3 miles south of the old engine grounds. And we're standing outside talking, and all of a sudden, I hear this loud train whistle. And I looked at him and I said, what, I wondered where it's coming from. And he says, I said, where's that train at? And he says, that's the steam train at the engine show. They're having education days tomorrow, and they're getting all of the equipment and everything running again. So, and they spent the entire day today, and I don't know if it goes on tomorrow, but they invite classes of students out there from the local schools all over the place, and they go through everything. They give them a train ride, and they show them the woodworking and everything else they have going on at the club. So,
It's 4th graders, and we do 2 days of it. Unfortunately, TCAPS doesn't get to participate. It's all the other school systems. It just doesn't have enough time and enough staff. People can only volunteer so much time in their week.
but you talk about a community or civic-minded outfit, it's the old engine show.
Cool.
Anybody got anything else for notices and announcements? Dick?
I saw the longest train coming into Traverse City today I've seen in 3 years.
I heard that thing.
2 cars.
Oh. I was there too.
There we go.
We don't have any reason
Motion
for a
to
closed
adjourn.
session, do we,
Come
Dean?
on.
Motion
You don't
to
want to
adjourn, Mr.
chit-chat
Chairman.
for another half an hour?
All in favor?
Aye.